In this lesson, we're going to take a look at this awesome line from Frank Gambale. As you can hear, there's lots of great things happening there. This is the essence of transcription, and why it's so fun and so good for your playing is you can take a line like this and really mine it for different ideas and concepts. Before we get into this, just listen to how Dave Weckl is listening so closely to what Frank's playing, and how he changes the cymbals when he comes to the syncopated phrase halfway through the segment we're looking at. I love how Chick is just really enjoying the vibe of this. Everyone's just together. That's the great thing about jazz fusion when it's played really well. Everyone is on the same page, listening to each other. It's a moving, breathing conversation. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play the line up front. This is my transcription, so these are fingerings I've come up with. You may find there might be different ways of playing this easier for you, but this is the easiest way that I could come up with it and maintain the articulations and flow. We're going to break this down into several segments. So first we'll take a look at the chords, then we'll look at the individual components of the lick and some of the concepts we can take from them. And then I'm going to show you some improvisations that I've done using those concepts over my own backing track. And I'm doing this more as a way of showing how I would take a line and get stuff out of it. And hopefully this is helpful to some guitarists out there who haven't done this sort of thing before. Okay, so first of all, we should probably give the backdrop of harmony that this line takes place over. So the solo section really lies around B minor 7 to be exact, and G sharp minor 7. And for both of these chords, Frank's really outlining a Dorian tonality for each of them. So for B, we have the B Dorian mode. And then for G sharp, we're going to have G sharp Dorian. That's the tonalities that we're outlining. There aren't many outside notes in this particular solo apart from some chromaticism, but we can really get a grip around these concepts we're about to look at by understanding what chords are happening underneath. Okay, so the first line sounds like this. It starts on the E of the first beat, so 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and That really does break up the line. Starting it on that E gives it that syncopation, and what we're really doing here is outlining over B minor 7. We've got the notes initially of what we could look at as a D major 7th arpeggio. So D major 7 would be D, F sharp, A, and C sharp in this case. If we labelled the D note the root, it would be root, 3rd, 5th, 7. But because we're looking at it over B minor, it actually becomes the minor 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7, and the 9th. So using this major 7th, starting off the minor 3rd of the chord, gives us these extended tones. Then we have that segment, which is just filling in the gaps there. And for this, we're using economy picking throughout. Because we're starting on the E of 1, we're going to start with an up pick. That gets the timing in there. Normally you have the down pick on the downbeat and the up pick on the upbeats, or any subdivisions thereof. Obviously it's an economy picking lick. Usually you'd have down, up, down, down. But for the groove to really feel natural, to get you into the flow, starting on that up pick really does make a huge difference. Then Then the line keeps on going. So we're just highlighting more notes from the B Dorian scale there. The only bit which really sort of stands out here is the use of this B flat A sharp note on the 6th fret high E string. What Frank might be thinking there as he's improvising is he's preempting the chord change to G sharp minor 7, and he's aiming for that 9th over G sharp minor. So the next line, the chord changes to G sharp minor, and I'm going to start as actually on the E of the 4th beat of the previous bar, so on the 7th fret on the E string, which is the B note. And okay, so we're starting here with the top part of a B major 7th arpeggio. But this is over G sharp minor, of course, so that's now going to be minor 3rd, 9, flat 7, 5th. Okay, then it gets a bit more angular. That particular phrase is lovely. What's really cool about this is because the phrasing has really been picked up from the previous bar, we get this rhythmic displacement. You've got a group of 3 on the beat, so 1, 2, 3. And then this next arpeggio starts on the of 1, okay? 1 E and. So it gets you that syncopated feel. We've got a 3 into a 4 feel over a 16th note time frame. And then we've got this great little classic Frank Gambale style roll here. And then he sort of repeats that, so the phrasing kind of repeats over these next 2 segments. Quite a tricky one to get down, but a really great sound. Now, in terms of visualizing the fretboard, I'm kind of seeing this chord voicing underneath, mixed with that voicing as well. So for this main part, I'm sort of seeing these notes. You could analyze this as a kind of B major 9 sharp 11 or something, whatever you want to call it. There's no third in it. But we can, if we know where that is now, whenever we're approached with minor 7th chord, if we know where our B major 7th is, or major 7th arpeggio is, up a minor 3rd from the root of G of the chord we're playing over, we can start to use these ideas ourselves in our own improvisation. Let's move on to the next part. And this is the bit which I was talking about where Dave Weckl really starts to go. So this is going back to B minor. So this first bit is outlining a B minor arpeggio. And you could also sort of see this bit as the 5th and the minor 7th of the B minor. So then we've got this arpeggio here. This is a 1st inversion E major arpeggio, starting on the 3rd. And this is where there's some syncopation happening. So this line starts, or this particular bit, starts on the E of the 3rd beat. And we're going to keep that phrasing sort of moving over as the beats go. So then we have... So this line here, that's outlining an A major arpeggio. And then we've got a E7th arpeggio. Okay, so these are all little arpeggios that mostly based around A and E major arpeggios. Now don't forget, B minor, Dorian, that's the 2 chord in the key of A major, and that's A is the 1, D is the 4, and E is the 5. So this is sort of going in between the 1 and the 5 over the B minor 2. Okay, so we're getting this. All it's doing really is highlighting different intervals. If we look at A major over B minor, that highlights the flat 7, the 9, and an 11. So you're getting some really nice top voicings there. Lots of different ways of approaching the Dorian sound. Let's just hear that one more time. Cool. So this is more of a scalic phrase. Okay, this is all these notes are actually, you know, we're thinking B Dorian still. I like the way he breaks up the scale there, highlighting the 9 and the 11 over B. Really sort of tense tones there before going into a chromatic phrase. And again, I'm starting on an up pick. And I've notated with the economy picking, but I do a bit of both really. It's up to you, whatever you find most comfortable. So what we're now going to do is just continue that phrase. So this is a chromatic walk down from the minor third down to the root of B. Then you've got the major 7th and the dominant 7th of B. And over to the 9. So we're highlighting that 9th. We're actually highlighting all of the chord tones there in that line. You know, you've got the 3rd, root, the 7, flat 7, and the 9. So all together. Cool. Okay, so let's just start the next lick as we've done before, starting on the of the last beat of the last bar, and it gives us this. This is a great phrase. I love this. Now, that 14th fret was initially over B, it was the 9, but now we're back over to G sharp minor, it becomes the 11. Now, technically, let's just have a look at what we're actually outlining here. Outlining an F sharp major triad. That's a major triad, a tone down from the root of G sharp, or the 1 chord of F sharp major. Okay, so that's a major arpeggio down a tone, highlighting the 11, 9, 7, and well, back to the 11 again. Okay, and then you've got a sus note there. You've got this nice little classic sort of movement there, but it's been put into a jazz fusion line. Okay, so lots of these rolling bars here of the index finger. So using sus arpeggios again, and using the 1, 4, 5 major triads from the parent key. Or in this case, the 1. In this case, the 1. And then we get into this line. Now I'm seeing this as a D sharp blues scale. So D sharp, that's upper 5th from our G sharp. So blues scale played upper 5th in our key of G sharp minor. Little thing to note here as well, you've got this little triplet phrase. So really that's coming from the upstroke. Making sure you've got that rolling in between the strings to get that triplet out nice and smooth. Really lighten up on the pick, that's what helped me. So now we've broken down the actual line itself and just talked about the various concepts which make up the line. Now I'm going to demonstrate some improvisations over my own backing track, and I'll tell you which one is using which concept as we go along. I haven't provided tablature for these examples, and the reason being is that I really believe if you know your arpeggios across the neck and use your ear as much as you can to pick up these concepts, the more internalised they become in your own playing, in your ear. You start to hear these things and you start to connect them with what's on the fretboard. So let's dive in and look at some of the improvisations I've done, and be sure to give the concepts a go yourself over your favourite backing tracks. So now we've taken a look at the core parts of what Frank's playing. We're now taking some of those concepts out of that solo and playing it in ways that are more familiar to us, but also in ways that are pushing us to think in new ways. So concept 1 is taken from the first bar of the lick, and it is using a major 7th arpeggio, upper minor 3rd from the root of the chord. So if we're in B minor, we're playing a D major 7th arpeggio, which will highlight the minor 3rd, 5th, the 7th, and the 9th of a B minor chord. Here's how that sounds. So concept number 2 is based around using sus arpeggios. Now, in a lot of Frank's interviews, he'll talk about how he uses fourths quite a lot, that leap, often using a rolling bar technique, as we saw in certain elements of Frank's line. So for this improvisation, I'm focusing on sus triads. It really makes for a really cool, wide, modern, expansive sound, something you hear a lot of saxophone players and piano players do. Let's check it out. Alright, so the third concept is now using major triads built from the parent key. So if we're in B Dorian, it's A major, and that's the 1 chord, and the 4 and 5 chord are going to be D and E. So in this improvisation, I'm focusing on using those triads over that B minor chord, A, D, and E triads, over the B minor chord, in order to highlight just different tones. Let's check that out. So, concept number 4 is using just scalic stuff. And this is literally playing the Dorian mode over B Dorian. Fairly straightforward approach. I'm using some chromatic notes to fill in the gaps. This is something I'll break down in more detail of how to do in a rock fusion context in a future video, but for now we can hear that there's more of a closer relationship of notes. Let's check it out. Final concept, which is playing pentatonic or blues scales up a fifth from the root. You can also play a pentatonic scale up a tone from the root. So if we're in B minor, we could play C sharp minor, blues, or we could play, in this case, as I'm demonstrating in this improvisation which is coming up, I'm playing an F sharp blues scale over the B minor chord. That's highlighting the 5th, the flat 7, the root, the 9, and the 11th of a B minor chord. And the flat 5 from the blues, that's giving us a flat 9, which is a bit outside, but we're using that outside note as we would use the blues note in the tonic key as well. So there's a passing tone. Let's check it out. Okay, so those are the main concepts. You could break it down in many ways. There's probably even more going on, and there's definitely a lot going on rhythmically as well, which is something else I'm going to break down in a future lesson video, because I think it is a big part of making these ideas work. It's phrasing with them lyrically and rhythmically, rather than just playing up and down, note next to the next note, next to the next note, whatever happens sequentially. Actually breaking it up rhythmically can make a huge difference in the intention, how it comes across to the listener, and also how it feels to express yourself when you play. So as you've probably realised, all of these concepts are just different ways of explaining Dorian. We're just playing those same Dorian notes, but we're making smaller patterns. We're focusing on smaller segments of information, which makes us phrase differently. If we're thinking of the scalic approach, as I demonstrated, you can hear that it's closer together tones, and that's fantastic. However, if you're looking for little melodies and little ideas to pop out at you, seeing these triads, seeing these pentatonics, these sus voicings are really going to help give you more definition and direction in your improvisation. I'd highly recommend checking out these books by Frank Gambale. The Frank Gambale Technique book is one of the most simplified and easy to understand approaches to this concept. Of course, this method has been around before the book. This is what jazz musicians have been doing on all instruments for a long time, is visualizing these superimpositions of ideas over chords. But Frank's book, for me, was very helpful, and often this method comes from people like Don Mock, Larry Carlton. You hear people like Lukather doing this all the time. Scott Henderson, Jazz Rock Fusion Mastery, that's also a really great video to check out. Same concepts, same ideas, but really helpful for breaking out of our scalic playing and coming up with more interesting phrases. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I really love spending time transcribing and learning from my favourite players, and I think it's something we can all do more of. Definitely see the benefits straight away. If we're doing it with our ear, we're internalising more than just the lick. We're learning something which is going to go into our melodic toolbox, our rhythmic toolbox, how we view the guitar neck, how we approach chords, how we approach lead playing, how you approach music in general. Learn from the music you love. It's really important. So if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you're a subscriber or about to subscribe, please also hit that bell notification button. I'm going to do a lot more of these in the very near future. Lots of stuff based on my favourite transcriptions of artists that I've done, and also of concepts that I've found very helpful in my journey as a guitar player. Alright, take care.